All right, you've come to the session on leading toxic teams to becoming healthy teams. And this is going to be a workshop type environment. So one of our beliefs is that not one of us is as smart as all of us. So this is going to be very much participatory. We hope to leave here being equipped and also resourced with some things. So you may want to prepare to take photos or whatever you want of things that you produce as a group that is going to better equip us in leading toxic teams to becoming healthy teams. One of the things about this subject is we need to realize it's such a large subject, there's no possible way that we can cover everything with it. So let me tell you what our plan is, though. We hope to spend some time in this session identifying what does that look like, what is a toxic team, and then how do we address that? And then finally, we'll talk about how do we avoid now a healthy team reverting back to the toxicity that it's just come out of. So that's kind of the goal. What are the practices to maintain that team health?
All right, so we want to first start by identifying the elements of a toxic team. So even if you haven't been on a mission team, but a business, part of a business group or business project or whatever, office, we want to ask you to take a moment to think about a time in your life when you were on part of a toxic team or toxic group, okay? So think about what that was like for you, working in that environment. How did it impact you? So what we're going to do is we're just going to, as a group, do a mind map. And so he's got the word toxic up there and stressful. And so whatever comes to your mind, don't edit, just shout it out loud and we'll put it up there. There's not communication or not good communication. The quality of the communication, maybe we'd say, is poor. There is communication, but it's poor. Okay. We can't get input? Well, exclusionary by class or name. Would you just expound a little bit? Oh, if your job doesn't ask you to speak, then that's not your role to speak up. Okay? So some things here on communication. What else? What? Dependency? A little bit. Would you elaborate? Okay. Okay. Unhealthy codependency. Yeah. Wounding. Hi, Darla. So we're not really a team. Members avoiding team. Yeah, definitely not doing holidays together. We're not, let alone. Yeah, we're not really working. Okay. Passive aggressiveness. Nobody in the Minnesota room here knows about that, right? Mm-hmm. I'm a Minnesotan, so I can say that. Okay. Lack of motivation. Is that you in the back? Okay, great. Thank you. Lack of motivation on a toxic team. Manipulation. Maybe through that backdoor passive-aggressive way. This doesn't rotate. Misunderstanding. There's just not trust in that communication, is there? We're not really communicating. There's control of actions and an information. Power. Mm-hmm. Backbiting. What's the impact on you, maybe, internally? There's fear. You made the motion closing down, withholding. Yeah. Have we filled it up yet? Darlene? All right.
Right. Seems like some of you have had experience with toxic teams. It's difficult. It is something that impacts us in very significant ways, and it really negatively affects the functionality of a team and team community. One thing we should do, though, is define what is it we're talking about when we talk about a toxic team. I like to look at this quote from Robert Bacall. It says, "We can think of organizations as falling on a continuum. One end is anchored by organizations that function well. In the middle, we find the average organization that is effective but could be better. And finally, we have the toxic organization, an organization that is largely ineffective but is also destructive to its employees and leaders." So we'd like to use that as our definition of what we're talking about. We're talking about teams that are destructive, actually, to their team members. Before we go on, what questions do you have about this definition or any request for clarification? All right, we'll use that then as our definition.
Okay, so what we're going to do we're going to first do a Bible study on a toxic team characteristics from Scripture. And so I just quickly counted, there's approximately 36. So if you can break into groups of 6. And so this is a workshop, means you got to get moving and produce something together as a group. We're going to ask you to, considering this definition of toxic, we can put it back up, is in your group, somebody read out loud Matthew 23, 1 through 36. I think that's the whole chapter, isn't it? And then identify, if you could just jot, somebody could be the scribe in the group and jot down what are the characteristics. I can't read my notes. What are the characteristics, the examples of toxicity from that chapter that you identify? Okay, so just basic observations from the text in your small group. So if you would take the next about what, should we say 10 minutes to do this? Is that, do we have time for that? Okay, if you could get into groups of 6 and take 10 minutes to do this, you can either be in the chairs or maybe gather around a table if that's easier for you. And then we'll all come back together as a group. Take the next couple minutes to try to just jot down the rest of your thoughts, okay? Just 2 more minutes. Okay, so I gotta get started now. Okay, it's so hard to break into these groups because you're all working so well. And we know it's not hardly any time. So that was a double negative. I'm aware of that. Who would like to go first? And I'm going to come over to you with the microphone and just share what you did come up with. All right? Everybody's in the same boat. Y'all had the least amount of time. So who would like to go first? Okay. All right. Can you share? I'm going to hand you the mic, Bruce.
Share a few of them and leave it some for others. Okay, we're going to start with toxic is you don't practice what you preach. You put burdens on others and you do your deeds for show. And pride is a huge one because the Pharisees will seek their own glory and desire the best showy seats of the house.
Leaders with their egos out of control. All right, you're next.
hypocrisy, legalism, religiosity, false spirituality, seeking titles and positions, arrogance, finger pointing, adding burdens to others, and judgmentalism.
All right. Oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot that he's trying to write as we speak.
Oh, religiosity, seeking titles or positions, arrogance, but they already said proud, so you can skip that. Finger pointing, adding to other people's burdens. That's kind of like hypocrisy. And judgmentalism.
All right. Which group would like to go next? Joyce?
Most of those are duplicates, but they were threatened by Jesus because he might take away their following. They were lazy, maybe that was said. They had lacked any devotion to Christ, and they were closed-minded and exclusionary. They didn't want to deal with other people.
Closed-minded. Okay. Do y'all want to share something?
I think just a couple of add-ons. They were not vulnerable, and they were not self-aware.
All right. Great. Thank you. It's amazing how much you can come up with in a short time, though, isn't it? All right. And of these groups, I know that everybody's already, there's already been a lot said, but what would you like to add?
Hypocrite in Greek means pretender, being under the mask. So that's the deceitfulness. Having the authority or taking authority of leadership, but not the responsibility. Telling people what to do that you're not doing.
All right. Great. Thank you. All right. You're the last, so it might be hard. What else would you add to that?
Not willing to be corrected, and then leading others into sinful ways.
That simple way is kind of like, it's almost like there's this clear cut, there's a lot that's gray out there, isn't it? It would be nice if it was just a yes or no, or the last session was, isn't there one standard for all risk situations, but that simple ways is really, it's easy for people who don't live in the gray, where decisions and problems on the field are quite complex. So we could probably, some of what you said was even authenticity. The Pharisees weren't authentic, which is a lot of what you were alluding to. But what hinders us from confronting toxic people, do you think? What hinders us from confronting toxic people? Fear. And what, maybe name some of those fears. What are they? Yeah. Fear, I'm just going to repeat because the recording, fear of what they might think of us. Fear of the backlash, yeah, and the consequences of that. Confronting, you feel like they might view you as superior, or? Oh, not confronting a superior, yeah, that's hard, yeah. What would happen? Did you have something to add? Okay. Fear of rejection. Yeah, we don't want to stand out. We want to fit in. Yeah, if I say this thing, it's not going to make a difference, and then now I have to deal with that consequence. There's a break in the relationship. Yeah, there's a lot of reasons. Yeah, I'm going to reap what I sow, and it won't be good. Yeah. There's a lot of good reasons why we're afraid.
A lot of these things that you've mentioned, we can put in different categories, which kind of can be summed up by this, that we oftentimes have a lack of willingness to confront the toxic person or people that we see on our teams because we lack confidence that there would be any receptivity or a real change. And it's because we now have grown accustomed to the practices that these toxic people have to kind of deflect this confronting of their behavior. And let me just list some of these for you. They defer, they downplay, they deny, they distract, they discredit, and they destroy. And you see these kind of progress by the amount of damage that they do to team and the amount of toxicity that's communicated by their response to the confrontation. What does this look like? Well, you might confront someone. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm going to interrupt you just to say, if you want the PowerPoint, you can have it. If you don't want to do a lot of writing, but sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you for that.
Good. Yes, you can get that from us. You might confront someone and say, hey, when you do this, it impacts us this way. You need to know that that's doing damage and has this kind of result on our team, some of the things you mentioned. And they might respond with saying, yeah, I'll have to look into that. It's a real busy time right now, and that'll be something that I'll look into in the future. But you know they never will. They're just saying that. Or they might downplay it. Well, I actually don't think it's as bad as you're saying. It's kind of the normal way, or that's my position, that's what I should be doing. They downplay it. Or they might deny it outright. I think you're really misunderstanding this situation. What you're saying, you're just not really getting it. Let me really describe to you what's happening here in this. Or they may respond with a distraction. There is a problem. I agree with you. Things aren't well here. Have you looked into this person or this issue or this thing, which is completely different than what you have confronted them about? Or they may discredit it. Well, that person that told you that, well, you know them. Or they may even be saying that about you. You know, I've looked at your Myers-Briggs types and I know that you're really sensitive to this kind of thing. And so that's probably something you should be working on, right? Or maybe they'll switch into a destroy mode. This isn't something that's voiced just like what was mentioned, but they go into attack. Boy, I'm going to make them pay for this. And it's inside of them, and they have their way of making someone pay for this uncomfortable situation that they've been put into. So that's what it can look like. What observations do you have about these typical ways that toxic people tend to respond when they are being confronted? What comments or observations do you have about these? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. So what you said before about, there's a lack of self-awareness that happens in a toxic environment. Sometimes that's projected by these toxic people. They don't want to have any kind of extra awareness. They don't want to gain an understanding of the situation at all. And so they put up these kind of responses that make the confrontation not have an effect.
It's all about self-preservation. If I can deflect it in any which direction, then it won't come to me.
Yeah, they're protecting themselves, aren't they, in this? What responses of these do you think are the most common of these different ways? What strike you as, oh yeah, this is probably the most common that I've seen? Yeah, go ahead.
The discredit, oftentimes instead of taking blame, they'll be like, oh, well, this was happening, or I did that because of this situation.
Yeah, so that form of discrediting that can come in I really want you to understand that that's not what I meant, or this is really what was happening there. It's true. Toxic people, they really want to be judged by their intentions only. And so when you bring up, this is how your behavior is impacting us, they're like, no, you just don't understand. That's a problem. This is my intention. Well, the whole team is sitting there going, really, I don't care about your intention. This is what your behavior is doing to us. That's right. What else? What other things seem common? Okay, so there's a statement there. Am I saying should we confront behavior rather than people? What are your thoughts about that? What do you think? What do you think has the better chance up here? Yeah, as opposed to the people. Yeah. Yeah, so thanks. So there's an awareness that, well, they probably won't separate it. If you confront the behavior, they'll probably take it personally anyway. Might be. Was there another thought?
If you bring up, this is how it makes us feel when you do such and such, maybe they don't realize how that looks to other people.
Okay, so maybe there's more chance of success if we, in that confronting, we let them know that when this behavior happens, this is how we're impacted. And so maybe they can suspend it out here a little bit and a little bit further away from themselves. Here's what we notice happens on teams. We confront behavior, but we do it in a general sense, not associated with the person at all. Toxic people, they aren't prone to having it be on them. They're just like, oh, that's someone else. That's not me at all. But it happens over and over again on mission teams. So, oh, that was so bad when Jim did that. I'm going to send a new policy email out to the team. And Jim will keep doing what he's doing because he doesn't associate it with himself at all. Which one of these do you think is the most damaging way to respond? Yeah, destroy. It's in it. It's inherent in the response. I am going to destroy something. Do not think for a minute that this isn't part of a toxic person's motivation. Just because it's not voiced doesn't mean that this isn't part of a toxic person on a mission team. They are trying to destroy people, ministries, effectiveness. It sounds awful, but it's there. It's part of it. So we need to talk about some helpful strategies. How do we handle this?
And part of the plan for today was to identify. So now that we've defined, we know what toxicity looks like, we've all shared, we want to talk about what can we do with this kind of situation and with these people. What are some strategies to overcome the resistance with the toxic people? And we want to ask you, again in your groups, we're going to give you the sticky note thingies, and we're going to ask you to record words, attitudes, and actions to overcome these resistant responses. So you might want to, maybe you want as a group, go through each one and think about through words, attitudes, and actions to overcome those responses. We're going to ask you to record one item per sticky note, whether it's a word on one sticky note or an attitude or an action on one sticky note. And then we're going to ask you if you could take the next 5 minutes, and then we're going to put all of that onto one sheet so we can share together and see what we come up with for overcoming that resistance. So what questions might you have on this? Your group will be working together to come up with as many things as you can in 5 minutes. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. We'll go back to the screen with the definitions.
So let's take an example. What's one way of responding? What's an effective response strategy, either in an action, a word, or an attitude, that can help? What's one? Who has one? Say that again? To serve them, right. So what we'd like you to do is write that word with the Sharpie marker serve so that it's big so others can see. All right. Great. So we'll pass those out to you.
Okay. No Amelia's, Bedelia's here. All right. I'll go to the far end. Synchronized. That was pretty impressive. We did pretty well there.
says something that's toxic.
So you're looking for one word to address the issue, the excuse, I'll look into what, that, when.
Somebody said something, schedule it or something.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, he asked about your own course of when, see, I'll look into that when.
Seems to me though, without, keep it neutral.
What day? On Tuesday, how does Tuesday work?
But still, you just express your feelings. You got an opportunity. When you make these my statements.
Yeah, I don't know that I never.
To find only choose one of the 6 words and I guess we'll find any word for each.
Whatever you can. But just take the next minute to wrap up what you have. As many things as you can come up with for each of them. There's always one in the group. And then we're going to ask you in a minute to come over here where we're going to put them up together as a group. We're going to have to really keep on moving because. Okay, it's so hard to break in, but if you all would come over here, if everybody would just get up and bring whatever sticky notes you've written on, and we're going to ask you to put them up here. So we'll wait till everybody gets over here, and then we'll just read them out loud one at a time. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Or if it's in all of them, put it in the
And the old squirrel.
Just wait. We're going to wait till everybody gets here because we want to have. All right. Would you be willing to go first? But I have to hand you the microphone because the recording. So if you can, I can hold it for you.
Okay.
You can put it wherever you want to put it for that, or if it's for all of them, you can put it in the middle. Okay, so he's going to read them off as he puts them on into the microphone, and then try to do your best to put it wherever, if it's for one specific area. Otherwise, if it's for all of them, just put it in the middle. All right? Okay, here you go.
Cool. For deferring, we specifically said maybe you could ask them when, or like ask them a date if they had a time in mind as an action. If they're downplaying it, try to understand where they're coming from, but realize that it still affects the team or like what's going on. I also said a little poop ruins the brownie. So, like, they could be downplaying it, but you can just come back and say, well, hey, there is still this thing going on, so.
I've never heard that idiom before.
That was Melina over there. An attitude we said you could have is humility and respect, so I guess that kind of goes for everything. Compassion. Listening and trying to understand. I guess that's just an attitude, kind of. Boldness and courage. Because I think maybe this goes a little bit more here, downplaying or discrediting, whatever. You might have to, you might come in with boldness and courage, and then they might shut you down, and you might have to re-up your boldness, prayer. And then affirming the parts you can, like affirming the leader or whoever, just an attitude. Yeah, there.
Great, thanks for your work on that. Okay, next. Good job. It's really helpful. And the idiom, is that an American idiom?
Did them all, but that's all right. We put a little poop ruins the brownie. We've got listen, because that refers to everything. It's going to be important to listen. Specific, if they're deferring, we need to be specific about what the issue is, and then specificity about when it's going to be addressed. Okay. And then also explain if they're downplaying something, explain why it's an issue, and why even if they're downplaying it, it still needs to be addressed. It can't be ignored.
Thank you for that. And for the idiom for all of us. Okay. Who's next?
So, oh gosh, now I'm getting all mixed up. So, with deferring, you need to give concrete examples and short accounts of what happened and kind of making sure they understand almost. And then we kind of brought up vulnerability, kind of to almost go all of them, except with the destroyer. Because that could be used in an interesting situation, but I think that one can really fall under all of them.
Yeah, that's wise.
And then persist in going after truth can go under the discredit. And then I think under the distraction, making sure to ask questions or this says defer, but pushing for more like ideas and like where are they actually coming from, and then being like, okay, so this is what I actually meant, and things like that.
Great, thank you. Thanks for your work on that. I gotta switch arms.
Okay. For deferring, we think if somebody says they defer, we say, well, let's set a time to talk about it, like follow back up. Some of these are going to start repeating. We thought for almost any of these situations, if you really want to win your brother or sister, you want to be private with them. Use some neutral language. But not so neutral that they don't understand we're talking about you. So head on. Okay, all right. That was all the Minnesota people. They just wanted to be sure. So, and ask permission. Can I talk to you about this? You said this thing. Who said say ouch, and what did you, I can't remember. So, yeah.
Somebody says something toxic, and I always say, ooh, ouch. Maybe they get their attention, like, oh, did I say something?
Yeah, so maybe to help with self-awareness. I don't know. Okay. Yeah, talk about how I feel. These are like I statements. Persistence. So if somebody's trying to distract or defer, we'll talk about persistence. And investment. This one, remember that you're trying to help your team out or help everybody out here. So it's a huge investment. It takes time, and being willing to make that investment to say, let's not downplay this. Let's have conversation with some compassion and being accountable. So again, let's check back and see. I think that goes for downplay or defer.
Wow, these are helpful. It's great. Thank you. It's amazing what we can come up with as a group. All right, got just two more, right? Or no? Okay, two more.
So hold them accountable, as we've mentioned. Bring in a mediator, which I think can kind of go for them all. Listen, don't accuse them. I think that also covers probably all. And then for the destroyer specifically, we're pray a lot. Pray for them, pray for a heart for them. Just pray.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, as others have said, just ask when, set a time. For downplay, just to press in, like kind of the I feel statements and to validate your own, to be able to validate your own, where you're coming from and your thoughts. Deny, just give concrete examples for situations where you noticed something or you felt something.
Great. Okay. Great. Thank you for your work on that. We've come up with a whole bunch of things that would cover. You can take a picture right before you leave of this.
What do you notice about these that you've come up with? Yeah, so even though there might be different strategies of resistance, there can be some common strategies of overcoming that resistance that can be employed. What are some other observations?
Well, do you think it's true? It's not so much you're hitting blame, but you're trying to steer them to self-discovery, epiphany, but the blame isn't really in there.
Yeah. Wow, that's a great statement. So even coming at this with a perspective of, I'm not trying to assign blame or even get them to acknowledge blame, but rather I'm trying to navigate them to a place of self-awareness or change. Yeah, that's a good word. All right. Well, thanks for your work on this. You're welcome to go back to your seats. And as you do that, we need to talk about what do we do next. So let's say that these resistance methods have now been effectively overcome through some of these strategies you've come up with. So now we've moved the elements that have been toxic in the team to being more healthy. And what do we do to maintain that health on the team? Well, there are those who have studied team health, and they have come up with 3 characteristics that are critical to maintaining team health. And they are these. Healthy teams know one another. They care about each other based on what now they know. And then they guard the team from future toxicity that comes, right? So they know one another, they care for each other, and then they guard the team if other toxic elements enter into it. What questions or observations do you have about these 3 characteristics of healthy teams? Sorry, go ahead.
So with regards to knowing the team, if there's so much conflict toxicity that different team members see the team different ways, they're going to have different ways of knowing.
Right, so there can be some disagreement in that knowing. What do I know about the team? Because sometimes all of that conflict and turmoil can cloud our judgment, right? It gets all foggy and messy and we don't really know what we know. And so sometimes we need to find some resources that help us to overcome those barriers to truly knowing one another on the team, right? Good. Any other observations? Yes.
Communication is very key.
Right. So just the awareness of the value of communication in this. In order to really know one another, we need to communicate with one another. And that's very important. When we have toxic teams, our inclination is to withdraw from the team and to now not engage. And the most effective way of getting to this point of truly knowing is to actually do the opposite, to lean into the team and to move toward one another. So that's important. All right. Yeah. So it's not just the quantity of communication that's important, but the quality of the communication. Is this truly vulnerable communication? Are we truly allowing ourselves to be known by one another? Good point.
Okay, we're coming to the end, but we want to do something to leave here a little bit more resourced, and we're going to ask all of you to input. This time we're going to be in 3 groups, so we'll have groups combined. Maybe we can have these 2 groups start at this flip chart, and these there's 3 tables over there. Okay, sorry. Then what we could have is those 2, these 2, and these 2 groups. Okay, so we got 3 pieces of paper over there, and what we're going to ask you to do is we're going to ask you, and we're only going to give you a little bit over a minute because we are supposed to end at 3:30, but we don't want to skip this. We want to have you share what resources there are, what effective practices, instruments, resources have you found that can help keep the team healthy or maybe help move it to a better place, okay? So in your groups, you're going to just have somebody record and write down as many things as you can think of for each of those categories that are on the flip chart. So we have know, care, and guard, right? For each of those categories, how can we better know our team, how can we care for our team, and how can we guard our team? So what resources are out there that you found helpful? Again, resources, practices, instruments, might be workshops, books, things like that. Okay? So we're going to ask you to jump up then and head over there. There's a marker, and let's see, 2 minutes each? Okay, we'll give you 2 minutes at each one, and then we'll just say the 2 minutes are up, and please rotate to the next group. And we'll rotate in a clockwise fashion, all right? I'm Polish, so that's challenging. No, we got these 3 tables over here. Sorry, I was the one that was wrong. We have 1 table, 2 table, and 3 table with the marker over there. So just go ahead and begin in your groups as soon as you get there, and then I'll just say when the next 2 minutes are up. Oh, I thought you wrote on there, no care guard. Oh, hey, we should have one group over at this table. I mean, one of the larger groups over at this one. Sorry, I didn't assign you to which table. Does that make sense? Do we have just, since it's a little mixed up, can we just have a group of people go over here and just work together? My bad. All right, just take the next minute to write down as many things as you can that are resources for the word that's on your sheet for retaining team health in the area of knowing the team or caring for the team or guarding the team. Okay, go ahead and switch to the next table. Just leave your pen there. So this group here, you're going to come over to this table, and then you guys here, yep, just move to your right. And then again, just go as many things as you can think of in the next 2 minutes for that you can add to what's already there. All right, time to switch. If you could go to the next table and add to what's there.
All right, we've reached the end. You guys have packed a lot of stuff in a short period of time. Our goal was to equip you with some resources. So if you would like to have us send you the PowerPoint, and then also we're going to capture all of your work here. If you'd like to receive that, you can leave your email address on this sheet that's on the table up here. Just write legibly your email address, and we'll send you the outcomes of what you produced and also the PowerPoint if you'd like it. And also feel free to look around the room at what you've come up with. Thanks for all your work. And don't forget to also write